So, I'm pre-recording this the day of Friday, October 8th, so if there's any information that comes out after this video's recording time, then I apologize. But today we're talking about Marc Bergevin, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, and what exactly the future could hold in store for him. If you don't know the situation over here, Marc Bergevin is the current GM. He's the man who runs the ship. He steers the steering wheel, as you can proverbially say over there. And his contract expires at the end of this season. He was hired by the Canadiens back in 2012. I believe it was like May or something like that. So it's been about, 9 years already of Marc Bergevin being the GM of the Montreal Canadiens, and his contract setting to expire at the end of the season would take him until the end of year number 10, solidifying a full 10-year tenure with the Habs. However, because his contract is expiring, there is indeed discussion going about when it comes to a new contract. Does Bergevin want to stick around? Do the Canadiens want Bergevin to stick around too? Is there a fit here, and is there an extension to be had? Well, let's go over onto some of the updates from guys like Elliotte Friedman and Darren Dreger to go over that discussion right here. This was 2 days ago, on the Jeff Merrick Show. This is what Friedman said about Marc Bergevin and whether or not he will extend. I think the job of being the Montreal Canadiens GM has taken its toll on him too. I know last year he was considering walking away at the end of the season and not finishing this year. He was bummed out at times. Then they went to the finals, and it kind of rejuvenated him a bit. Elliotte Friedman also talked about how Bergevin understands what Drouin went through and what Price is going through now. Now, before we go over onto the Darren Dreger quote, I do want to expand a little bit more on this idea right here. As I said, Marc Bergevin was hired in May of 2012. It's been 9 full freaking years. That's a long time for an NHL GM to stick around and be a part of an organization, especially for a team like Montreal that has had a few good playoff runs here and there. Obviously, they made the finals last year. A few years ago, 2014, they made the third round. But the Montreal Canadiens have never really been top tier, let's just say. For the bulk of time that Marc Bergevin has been on the Canadiens, they've been a barely sub-500, just around 500, maybe a little bit more than 500 kind of team, losing out in the first round or sometimes the second round, getting not really too lucky with draft picks and making a few interesting trades in the process. It's been a long time. And for Friedman to come out here and say that the way the pressure builds up in Montreal, we know what Montreal is, right? It's a hockey town. You walk down the street, everybody knows who you are. You can't go to the grocery store without somebody asking for your autograph. The pressure in this market is great. And you have yourselves what is a decade's worth of GMing at the helm of Marc Bergevin. Before last year, of course, it's just under a decade right there. But then he says he was considering walking away at the end of the year and not finishing up. Does that not kind of tell you how burned out a guy might be, being in this position of pressure and being the guy who's supposed to control this hockey team and push them into the promised land? They made the finals, yes, and it rejuvenated Marc a little bit, but I do like how Elliotte Friedman kind of rounds it out and brings it back over to Carey Price and Jonathan Drouin, saying that Marc Bergevin kind of sympathizes with those guys. I don't want to make it seem like I'm trivializing mental health and all that, but these guys are a part of the ship too. Jonathan Drouin, a very heavily scrutinized player in the media because of inconsistencies within his play. He's been the subject of huge pressure from the Montreal fans and media. Carey Price, same thing too. He goes out there and he's inconsistent in the regular season, he's good in the playoffs, but there is still that overarching pressure that engulfs players who are supposed to be great on this hockey team. That's just Montreal in general. That's just a good bunch of Canadian markets over here, and the pressure they put on their guys. You don't have a Connor McDavid or a Leon Draisaitl to be the face of your team and be the number one player in the league. You don't have an Austin Matthews or a Marner to lead the team in goals or be a top 5-point producer. You don't have, what do you have? You have a franchise goaltender, players who are never really in the top of the points race, and a team that very frequently gets eliminated in the first or second round. There's pressure here. And so for Marc Bergevin to be in the last year of this, it makes sense to me why there would be somewhat of a pushing and pulling tug-of-war situation with negotiations if this is the case right here, if Friedman is 100% accurate as to how Bergevin has been feeling being the GM of this team. going over onto some other perspectives over here, this is what Darren Dreger said on TSN 690 yesterday. It's today for me, it's yesterday for you. Dreger on TSN 690 echoes LeBrun's sentiments. He feels it's more likely than not that Marc Bergevin does not return as GM of the Canadiens. Okay, that's a double negative right there. It's more likely than not that Bergevin does not return as the GM of the Habs. Does that mean it's more likely he will return? That's what this sentence literally means, but I don't think that's what it kind of was trying to get across. Yeah, you can kind of tell the soul of the sentence isn't really the same as the literal definition. The contract negotiations have been going on for months now. Term isn't the issue, money is. The Montreal Canadiens are not willing to meet Bergevin's demands in terms of the contract. Dreger also said this, that there is a far bigger percentage that Bergevin will not be back next season as GM of the Habs than there is that he will be. And so that kind of falls into line as well. And I get it, a lot of people can go out there and say, come on, like, why are you talking about this? It's at the end of the season we're going to have to worry about. But I get it, it's almost a year removed from that time frame. But I just kind of want to start bringing up the ideas now, because if this is indeed the case where Marc Bergevin and the Canadiens are not able to settle on a contract due to monetary issues and whether or not Bergevin really does want to be back here in general, it would make for some really interesting perspectives as the year goes on. You have yourselves a whole bunch of guys that are on expiring deals like Ben Sherratt and all that. There are a few videos we can make talking about trade proposals and potential scenarios at the trade deadline, if the team is good, if the team is bad, and all that stuff. And Marc Bergevin is ultimately the guy who is at the helm of it all. So depending on how good the Canadiens are in this year and how well they're able to perform, all this contract stuff with Bergevin potentially staying, potentially going, being a lot more likely to leave than to stay instead, it adds a completely other layer of conversation to this hockey team, and it makes things a lot more interesting. So for Marc Bergevin, if he sticks around with the Canadiens, that would be great. We all kind of know the reputation that he has here in Montreal. Everybody loves him for the trades that he makes. Sure, the drafting is kind of suspicious, but still, you have yourselves a guy who is not afraid to go out there, make a big risky move, make a big risky trade, acquire a big free agent or two. He is not afraid to go out there and try his luck in the market. And I think a lot of Canadiens fans, while they do sometimes scrutinize him for trading away good players, cough, cough, Sergachev, there always kind of is this respect going on for Bergevin because he does what he feels like he needs to do. Whether or not that occurs next year with Bergevin as the GM of the Canadiens still is up for debate. But the way things are right now, just based off of what the insiders are saying, I'm not really too sure it's going to happen, man. I don't really know if there are going to be any contract extensions, especially due to the language that Darren Dreger uses when talking about it. There is a much greater percentage chance that Bergevin will not be back compared to that he will be back. And the way things go right there, I mean, who knows what Bergevin does next? If he decides to leave, is he gone? Like, is he no longer with the team? Do they just decide to promote him as a president of the team and they get somebody else in as a GM? Does he go to another team and start general managing them? Or does he just retire? Or what? Again, 10 years has been a long time for general managing one hockey team, so I don't know what's next in store. If it would be really likely, I guess, that he just up and away goes off to another team and starts being the GM for them. I guess it would make sense if that team isn't as heavily pressured as Montreal is. I could understand it if the idea is, he wants to go to a team where there's less pressure and therefore a lot less scrutiny in the public eye than Montreal, because I mean, every time the Canadiens end up losing a game or they go on a losing streak or whatever happens, they get shut out, a player that they signed doesn't do well, it's always, Marc Bergevin, man, come on, Bergevin, and it's been 10 years of that, so yeah, I could totally understand the perspectives over here, especially since, highlighting how important mental health is and whatnot. That's a lot of pressure for one guy. So, talk to me in the comments, what do you think happens with Marc Bergevin this season? How do you think he performs? Do you think he goes out there and makes some trades that are too risky, or does he just sit back as like a lame duck GM like Pierre LeBrun hinted at? Because if he's not guaranteed a job for next season, you don't want to go out there and either A, completely blow everything up, because if you're the GM of the team, then okay, well, clean up your own mess, right? Or you don't want to go out there and go all in and start making a team that's going to win this year, sacrifice all the future and whatnot, because if you do that, you are also screwing yourself up too, long term at least. So it's kind of a double-edged sword over here. If you're a guy in this position, teams coming off a Stanley Cup Finals appearance, they just lost a whole bunch of guys to know, KK, all of them lost Price as well, and now you need a contract for next season. It's kind of weird, isn't it? So talk to me in the comments. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed this episode of 99. And bye.